Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on number 3 of a 4-part series, Untangling Memory Loss. So the first thing, as you may recall from our previous times, the first thing we do is let's go back over some things that we learned in previous sessions. So the first question, are you ready? Okay. How many things do you hold in working memory? 5 to 8. Good job. Yay. This is awesome. Okay. Number 2, and I'm looking at you right here in our audience here at Tahali. So we get information through 5 senses. The first one is vision, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. Okay, good job. This is great. I love this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is look at the umbrella. Last week, we talked about the different types of dementia and how dementia is like a giant umbrella, and then underneath the umbrella are the different types of dementia. So we found a picture. I know last week there was just a little bit of confusion about this, but I hope this visual will really help. So the biggest drop here under the umbrella is Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so there are a few different kinds. Late onset, which is typically an inherited, a chromosomal issue. And then others have late life onset. Then frontotemporal, a little bit smaller. Then Lewy body disease, which can be Parkinson's related. I know sometimes we talked about last week how Parkinson's, it's like, oh, you have Parkinson's. Nope, you have Lewy body. Nope, you have Parkinson's. Sometimes it's really confusing because the symptoms are so similar. And then a diffuse Lewy body disease, and then vascular dementia, which we went over. Any questions about this slide before we get into our fun topic for tonight? Yes.
About the vascular dementia.
That includes, it's a little medical terminology, and I might have Marley give a kind of a different explanation, but there's multi-infarct. So it's typically people who have had strokes that have damaged different parts of their brain. Okay, that's kind of a simplistic way of looking at it, but it gets the job done. Okay, great. Any other questions on that?
Mary Susan,
Yes.
we have a question online,
Okay.
and it is what to do when an individual has severe paranoia with their dementia.
Okay, and we're actually going to cover that a little bit later. So the question for those of you that didn't hear online is, what do we do when, as a part of the process, someone becomes paranoid? Okay, I can relate to that. Okay, so I promise we will cover that a little bit later. All right. So the next one is a video. And remember in the first class, I talked about how certain videos really changed the direction of how I thought about dementia and how I wanted to approach the folks that had been entrusted to the care in my community. This was part of the state curriculum that I teach, the dementia specialty, and it's a bookcase analogy. Okay, of, you have a bookcase and the bookcase moves and you start losing books related to memory loss. So take a look at this great video and start looking for some cues. I think you'll really enjoy this.
Hi, I'd like to explain dementia to you in the way that it was explained to me. I'd like to picture that I'm an 80-year-old woman standing here, and that beside me there is a bookcase that's as tall as I am and is filled with books. Now, each of those books represents a fact or a date or a number or a memory that I've gained in the last 80 years of my life. So right at the top, my most recent memories, so what I had for breakfast, getting dressed this morning. The next shelf down might be things that are a little bit less recent, so maybe my last holiday, what I did at Christmas, maybe the last time you came to visit me. The next shelf down by my shoulders will be my 70s, my 60s, my 50s, my 20s will be down by my knees, and my childhood memories will be all the way down by my feet. So that is the bookcase that makes up me. Now, when I get hit by dementia, what's going to happen is that my bookcase is going to start to rock, and I'm going to start losing those books, starting from the ones on the top, which may explain why my short-term memory is likely to be affected first. So, as my dementia progresses, I might find myself having lost not only the top shelf, but the next one down and the next. I might find myself living in the 1950s. Now, embrace my reality. I go into my kitchen today to make myself a cup of tea. What do you think? Given that I'm expecting a 1950s kitchen, what's a likely accident that I might have? If you thought putting an electric kettle on a hob, that's absolutely right. Now, as my carer, as my relative, you might be tempted to say, we shouldn't let her make tea anymore, that's really dangerous. But there is a simpler solution, which might be to just change my kettle from an electric one to a whistling kettle, because that's what I'm expecting, and I know how to use that. And I learned how to use a whistling kettle all the way down in my childhood, so that memory is likely to stay with me a lot longer. That's not going to help everybody with dementia, but it might help me at this particular stage. Now, I talked about this one bookcase that's got all these facts and memories and numbers, and that's quite a flimsy bookcase, and when that gets hit by dementia, it rocks a lot. Now, this bookcase is representing a part of my brain called the hippocampus, which is more susceptible to dementia. However, my feelings and my emotions, the things that make me who I am and the reasons why you love me, they're all managed separately by a different part of the brain called the amygdala. And that's all here in a separate bookcase. It's a really strong oak bookcase. And when that gets hit by dementia, it's not going to move very much. Let me explain to you how the two bookcases work together. So when I was a child, I had a teacher. He's on the hippocampus bookcase. He was incredibly inspiring. And the way that he made me feel, inspired, in awe, that is stored in a separate book on my amygdala bookcase. So the teacher is on the hippocampus, but the way I felt, that's going to be managed by the amygdala. Now let's bring it back to today, where I'm the 80-year-old woman. I have dementia. You come to visit me. So that's a fact, that happens here. And we have a blazing row. I'm probably going to feel upset, sad, angry, and that's going to go onto the amygdala in a book here. You might go away thinking, it doesn't really matter. She'll forget that I even came to visit, let alone that we had a row. And you know what? You're probably right. That book will probably go. But what's likely to stay with me are those feelings, those emotions, that anger, and with nothing to relate it to, it might be really confusing for me. But let me leave you with a positive example. Say you come to visit me, and you take me out to the seaside, and we have a great time. So here it is, the seaside, the waves, the great time, the feelings of safety and happiness and love that I feel are held over here in the amygdala. As soon as we get back to my house, I've forgotten where we've been. That book is gone. And you might think, oh, it's just not worth it. Why do I bother? I don't think I'm going to carry on visiting her. But look over here. Those feelings, that safety, that warmth, that's going to stay with me for a lot longer. So I would like to encourage you to continue to visit and to care for the people that you know, relatives, friends who have dementia, and to remember that there is more to the person than the dementia. Thank you.
Okay. So what did you think about the bookcase? It really is such a great example. And we hear this a lot with families that come and visit in memory care, and they'll say, you know, the person doesn't know me. And I said, is there light in their eyes when you come in? Does it really matter whether they know you or do they remember how you made them feel? That's the joy. Okay. Sometimes we have to get over ourselves. And I start these conversations with me. Okay. It's not about me. If I'm caring for a loved one with dementia, it's how can I bring them moments of joy? A great book, Creating Moments of Joy, because it really is about them. It's not about me anymore. Okay. All right. So you ready for now what? Yes. Great. There's a book, and we will put out in the next series, I'm going to put out a list of resources that you can tap into. And one of those is a roadmap for dementia that the state puts out. It's kind of a collaborative. Some of these ideas came directly out of that. All right. So we went over the stages. Okay. Now, early stage, what to expect. There's two parts to this. So what to expect if you've had a diagnosis or your loved one has had a diagnosis, what can I expect to happen? Sometimes it's hard to figure out really where are we in all this. These are also some things that you can look at and go, uh-oh, I know where we're going, or this isn't happening anymore. We've moved on to a different set of symptoms. So things like forgetting names of familiar people and things. Now that's also normal aging, right? That's why we all have our name tags on. But forgetting the familiar things, or, you know, that's a coffee cup, but I can't pull that out of the air. Okay, that's a problem. Trouble multitasking. Okay, doing more than two things at once. Taking more time to process information. So we've got the 5 to 8 things. If we're just trying to process 2 and it's slow to happen, another warning sign. Increased preferences for familiar things. This one is very interesting because people will move into a memory care or perhaps into this wonderful community, and they say, oh, you know what? I'm going to take my brother out for a ride because he loved to go for a ride. Well, guess what? He might prefer familiar things. You know, we talked about paranoia. If you take somebody out of a familiar setting and they have memory loss, they don't know where in the heck they are. Where are you taking me? I don't understand. This isn't fun anymore. This isn't safe anymore. You know, when you don't feel well, don't you want your familiar things around you, your fuzzy blanket, your slippers, your favorite, you know, coffee cup or teacup? Okay, so try to like get into their head. Mild mood or personality changes. Again, this is early stage dementia. So at some level, the individual knows something's not right. That would scare me to death. If you thought you were losing part of your ability to think, to coordinate, to act as you always have, that in itself. So do you think there's mood swings? Yeah, I think so. Feelings of sorrow, suspicion, anger, and frustration. Again, how many people in this room can do what they did when they were 40? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we have normal aging plus dementia. Do you think that they're sorrowful? Sometimes the doctor here will prescribe an antidepressant to try to help them just kind of alleviate those moods and the feelings of sorrow. And again, suspicion, because if you can't process the information and it doesn't make sense to you, I can see why someone would be very suspicious. It's like, really, I don't know who you are and you want me to do this. Why should I trust you? It really makes a lot of sense when you put it together. Increased indifference to normal courtesies of life. They're trying to survive. They're trying to get through the day. Saying thank you for a cup of coffee, it's like, just give me my coffee. I just want to sit in my chair feel safe and drink my coffee. So again, things, oh, my husband was always so kind. Well, he may not be because of the process and where he's at. Trouble driving safely. That was one of the questions we got as well. This is a tricky one. I'm always so thankful for friends, relatives, and residents that say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable driving anymore. I'm going to give my son my keys. Those don't happen often, but one thing you can do at this point is appeal to their sense of responsibility. Okay, and it can be just that reminder, dear, remember, we don't drink and drive. We don't drive when we're tired. This might be the right time. Talk to the doctor. Okay, doctors can give great advice, or sometimes you can dodge the bullet because the doctor will say, oh, Corey, I don't think you're safe to drive anymore. And I don't want to have to contact the Washington State Patrol and, put you on the no-fly zone, right? So if you don't feel comfortable, enlist your kids, enlist the help of the doctor. If you're in a community, certainly we're able to help. Okay, you don't want somebody to have an accident and hurt themselves or worse. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, again, if they're still driving, initiate that dialogue. Ensure your loved one, medic alert, so you can get those little bracelets. They also have the bracelets that say, if I'm lost, this is where I live. One very cool thing, which I've seen work tremendously, is if the person only has one pair of shoes and you can buy shoes with a tracker in them. Okay, so if they did walk out of the house or wherever, that tracker can be located. All right. The other thing is, for anyone that has an iPhone, find friends. Okay, so that's another way they can be tracked, is through their iPhone. All right. Discuss end of life care and document these decisions. There's no easy way to do this. There just isn't. Hopefully the conversation has happened before now. I know my husband and I, when we first got married, we were in our, late 50s. And that's when we had that conversation, because you just never know what happens. So if those haven't happened, please get on top of that. Have a family meeting to discuss what's happening, and always keep them in the loop for support. There's no prize for going down with the ship. Okay, if you have family and friends that want to help, by all means, go with that. Okay. Sometimes too, as in my family, my husband and I, it's a second marriage, so we don't have children together. So sometimes that can be a little complicated depending on the family situation. So getting everybody on board can be interesting, but definitely get it on the front end instead of waiting. Have a backup plan in case something happens to you. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're the strong one. It's my loved one that's ill. Well, things happen. Okay. So make sure you've got a good backup plan. And then contact local community support programs for family caregivers. Okay. There are some great support groups out there. It just sometimes, to get a break away, we do a great family support group right here at Tahali that has been growing by leaps and bounds, and is just, it's nice to talk to people who are walking in the same shoes you're walking in. So don't feel nervous about, taking that step. Okay. All right. Mid-stage. So back to the bookcase. We're having some more problems with memory. We've dropped a few shelves of books. Now I'm having trouble organizing, following instructions, and solving problems. Okay. It just is what it is. Now it may be harder for me to recognize even familiar people. Okay. But look at people. We talk a lot about the five senses, don't we? And it's how people are made to feel. Okay. She talked about that. I talk about it. That's really what we have to focus on, is look for the light. And I'm going to say something here that you might not want to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you go to visit someone, especially mid to late stage dementia, and you're having a crappy day, okay, maybe you don't feel good, but oh, I told my friend, I told my husband, I told my sister, wife, whatever, that I was going to come and see them today, and I just don't feel up to it. You know what? Stay home. Do not, I'm telling you, do not go to visit them. Because just like she talked about, the mother didn't remember the trip to the beach, but she remembered how her daughter made her feel. Okay. Sometimes we have trouble because a lot of times in mid stages when people decide it's time to go to memory care, maybe there's been an elopement where someone's walked out of their home, they're just not safe anymore, or maybe you're just worn out. Okay, and it's time for memory care. And the person moves in and they're doing great, and then a family member comes to visit, and oh my goodness, they're not themselves. They're yelling, they're anxious, they don't understand, they're in tears, they don't get it. And the caregivers are like, what the heck happened? She was fine 15 minutes ago. And so Marley and I will say, well, what happened right before that? Before everything shifted, what happened before that? Oh, their daughter, brother, sister, mother, whatever came to visit. Okay. How many people, and I can't see people in Zoom land, but I'm trusting you. How many people promised their loved one, I will never put you in a home? Okay. That is the number one thing I hear about with guilt. That family members say, I can't do this. I promised my mom I'd never put her in a home. Okay. So then you come to visit mom, knowing that really it is the best thing for her, but you are riddled with guilt because I promised her. Okay. Do you think she's going to react well to your visit? Because she knows you're not you. She knows you're anxious, you're nervous. Well, what if she reads that? It's going to be, oh my gosh, what's wrong? What's wrong? I don't understand. This isn't my daughter. She doesn't act like this. What's going on? I don't understand this. Okay. Now tag that also back perhaps to paranoia. Okay. Does that start to connect some dots? Okay. All right. So forgetting how to initiate routine tasks or complete them. I saw somebody the other day and it was on this Keurig machine and it was a cup and I want coffee, but there was no light coming on as to what the next steps were. Okay. Even though the person has a Keurig, but it was in a different place. Okay. Resisting bathing or personal care. Marley could teach a whole chapter on what that looks like. Okay. Again, part of this, try to put yourself in their shoes. I've bathed myself for 65 years, well, probably 60 of the 65 anyway. And now somebody else is going to do this. It's embarrassing, depending on who it is. It's just, yeah. So resisting, why? Okay, we did the hand under hand thing. Sometimes that will help because they see your hand in the bird. Remember the bird? That didn't sound good at all, did it? Yeah, don't tell Kevin about that part. Okay, but they see their hand when you're actually helping them, okay? Delusions or hallucinations. Sometimes that's medication, sometimes it's just the process. And then increasingly sensitive to caregivers' mood and behavior. Okay, yeah, quick story. I had a resident many years ago and just the nicest little man. Oh my gosh. I mean, you know, called everyone dear, you know, and just a sweetheart. And there were two caregivers working and they had just a bit of a little conversation because one wanted the day off and they were told, well, if you want the day off, you have to get coverage. So they were just not really getting along. So caregiver A, who was his favorite, was busy. So caregiver B took this gentleman to the restroom. And when she was helping him, he hauled off and punched her in the face, sent her to the hospital. And of course, she was not really happy about that. So I said to her, what happened right before that incident? And she started crying and she said, this was all my fault. She said, I was fighting with caregiver A, and that's his favorite. And he was angry about that. It really wasn't anything else. And it's okay. And fortunately, we were able to bring it around, and he came up with a nickname for her after that, and everything was great. But again, they read the room. Boy, do they read the room. All right. So mid-stage action steps: request a home safety evaluation with a physical or occupational therapist. You might see some increasing falls in here. So you want to make sure people are still strong, especially if they're spending a lot of, couch time. Update your backup plan. And if financial help is needed, contact your local home and community service office. And they're great. And then complete your end of life planning. Okay.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I had a friend that literally had, I guess, kind of tricked his mother to finally get her to go to the nursing home. I don't know exactly what his relationship or after that, but it begs the question of what is the best process to try to convince somebody to go to one of the community organizations? Or it wasn't working in the family.
Right.
In this case, she just wanted to go.
Okay, so the question is that this gentleman has a friend, and his friend knew his mom needed to be in care, but she was very resistive. And what's the best way to handle that? Because she didn't understand the fact that she needed care. And that's the whole thing is, remember, in the brain wiring, you start to have short circuits. Okay, so the ability to reason and make decisions it's just not gonna work. And this is where it gets really, really tough, because the family plan that we talked about is the family makes the decision to move forward. And if the place that they're moving, like our beautiful arbor here at Wesley at Tahali, you have a conversation with the staff. And this one is really hard. And
because he became, you're talking about treatment, he became the bad guy in her
right.
probably the rest of her life.
No. And that's the beauty. So the comment was, then he became the bad guy probably for the rest of her life. Well, if we go back to the bookcase and the moving bookcase, what's the first thing to go? Short-term memory. Okay, so she may struggle with how he made her feel, but that can be worked on. Okay, and it's tough. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer for this, except you have to put the individual safety first. And if you work as a family, I think it becomes interesting, because the family will say, Mom, you don't understand. No kidding. No kidding. She has dementia. And then sometimes it'll be frustration and anger, because you keep saying, Mom, you don't understand. Well, no, she doesn't. And at some level, she knows she doesn't. So now she's feeling even worse than she did before. Sometimes this is a hot topic, but one phrase you'll hear us use is join the journey. And sometimes you have to lie. Okay, you have to do what's best. Right, you wind up doing that, and it hurts in the moment, but in the end, in your heart, you were doing what is best for your loved one. And that's hard. And that's one thing, if you get anything out of this, and I hope you get more than one or two things, is that you also have to take care of yourself. So your friend, you might have to go to counseling to try to, put those things together. And no, especially if maybe they're fighting against a family member who says, no, I can take care of mom. Yeah, we'll give that 48 hours and see how well that works. Okay, and it's the more times the person moves, the harder it is for them. There's not a graceful way to do it. And sometimes just forgive the term, rip off the Band-Aid. It's like, Mom, I know when I was a kid growing up, you always wanted the best for me. And that's all I'm trying to do for you, is what I believe in my heart is what's best for you. Again, they read your emotion. So if you're sincere and loving, they won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Okay, does that help? Okay, I saw a question. You skip delusions, what to do in mid-stage? Well, delusions, do you want to talk about delusions, Marley? We're going to bring Marley up, our wonderful Arbor nurse.
Hello. So with delusions and the hallucinations and paranoia, you never want to argue with them. Don't tell them you don't see it. Don't tell them it's not there and it's not real, because to them it is 100% real and it's happening. So you're going to want to redirect that attention. You're going to want to try to distract them away from it, as long as, and not all delusions are distressing. Sometimes, it's children, it's pets, it's this or that. Other times it can be scary. It can be bugs, the walls on fire. So just depending on the situation, if it's not distressing to them, just redirect that attention and then try to, console them at least the best you can. If it's distressing to them, then remove them from the situation and, agree with them. Yes, that must be very scary. Yes, this must be very hard. You don't have to say, oh, I see it too, but don't tell them it's not real, because to them it's very, very real. And then another thing you want to do is make sure that it's not related to something else. So delirium would be a sudden onset of a symptom like that. So the delusions, they kind of happen over time and frequently. Delirium happens quickly, and that could be a side effect of a UTI or medication, something like that. It doesn't last a long time. So just, there you go.
Any other questions? Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Okay, all right. Okay, so are you ready for late stage? Okay, so late stage, what to expect? Now we're at, look at the bookcase again. So we're way down, more knee range, okay? So what's gone? Short-term memory. Moving down. All right. So inability to recognize you or others by name. That's hard. That one, it's a gut punch, and there's no nice way to say that. When I talked about my son's stepmother before, with their permission, by the way, no HIPAA violations. I remember when he came to visit her one day and she called him the wrong name. She called him the name of her first husband. And just like I said earlier, I said, did light come into her eyes when she saw you? And he said, oh, absolutely. I said, well, it's about her. You brought her joy. It's a win. But still, I know a lot of people here and online are family caregivers. And things like this really hurt. I mean, they really hurt. And, a cup of tea isn't going to fix it. A cry in the shower because you don't want to cry in front of him or her is not going to fix it. It hurts. And you need to get support to deal with that. Okay. That's why we do family support groups here, because there's nothing more soothing than hearing somebody else say, I went through that same thing with my family member. Okay. All right. Be in the moment with them and know that they're not the only one that needs the care. Okay. Like the son we were talking about who had to place his mom. It's not an easy job for a lot of people. When they sign a contract with me to move into Wesley to Holly for the Arbor, It's the first time that they had to sign for their loved one, because someone with a diagnosis of dementia cannot sign their own contract. That is a huge responsibility. And when you think about, in our earlier discussions, some people with Alzheimer's type dementia in particular have a very early onset. They could be in their 40s or early 50s. Well, now you have a kid who's 30. And now suddenly you've got to be that responsible party. So it just behooves all of us to realize where we're at emotionally and what support do we need, and ask for it. Okay, ask for it. If you don't want to ask a friend or family member, email me. I'll help hook you up. Okay, increased difficulty communicating. You'll sometimes hear terms like word salad, where it's all words jumbled together, but it doesn't make any sense. Okay. Frequent or total incontinence. Remember, as the brain starts to deteriorate and it looks more and more and more like a very old head of cauliflower and not a plump brain, things like, nerves don't work. Your whole body isn't communicating with itself. So that's how things like that happen. Changes in physical abilities. Again, communication center is not communicating with your limbs. In the Teepa Snow video, she was talking about even normal aging, how you get up and your brain says, okay, stand up, hold the pee, remember that part? And then move your legs, move your arms, and get where you need to go. Well, if your communication system's off, that's not going to happen. With some types of dementia, there's rigidity, immobility, jerks, and seizures. We see this a lot with Parkinson's and Lewy body. And again, thank God, if you ask for the resources, there's equipment that can help with that. So people aren't stuck in bed, being bed bound. They can be in a Broda chair, they can get out, we could be outside, because there's a chair that helps them be safe and comfortable. Deep emotions, screaming, moaning, and flailing. Again, depends what part of the brain's affected. And then vulnerability to infections, especially pneumonia. Not fun, not fun. Okay, so I'm gonna beat this in. Be gentle with yourself. It's a hard road and nobody signed up for this. Okay, I don't know how prepared, no matter how much I teach, how prepared would I be if this hit even closer to home, like my own husband? Okay, or God forbid, if you had a family member. So here I am at 65. Well, what if this was a very early onset or part of a traumatic brain injury dementia of my 37-year-old son? Okay, this is hard. And the best we can do is be together. Oh, look, I segued myself. Be together in ways that don't require words. Just be in the moment with them. One thing we do a lot in memory care is hand massage. Okay, a little maybe lavender lotion. Just again, that's one of the senses that's still there. So that touch, okay? Just sitting on the couch holding hands, listening to music. And music is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful for folks with dementia. But just be with them. You don't have to, remember, they don't understand the words, they're not putting it together, but they know how you make them feel. Okay. All right. Actively seek palliative or hospice care. For those of you that are part of the Wesley family, we have an amazing palliative and hospice team at Wesley. Just amazing. I get to meet with those folks every Friday here. And these two services are covered by insurance, and people, I'll jump on this one real quick because we've got a little time. Hospice is not a death sentence. Okay. A lot of people, when we say, I think your loved one could benefit from hospice, they grab their chest, you wait to get the paddles, and they say, "What are you saying? My husband's going to die. He's going to die, next week." No, no. Okay. It's a diagnosis that you can't come back from, and we have to move forward. Okay. So they can provide furniture, they provide bath aids, they can provide a host of support services for you and for your loved one, and it's covered by insurance. Okay, people tend to miss this step, and it's really, it's so great. I mean, even if a person lives in memory care, they will still get a bath aid. They can still get massage therapy, this specialized furniture for them, and it's at no cost to you. Review with your loved one's healthcare professional any health issues and related medications that could be reduced or discontinued. That's another hard one. Okay, this one, sometimes there's a medication, and Marley could probably add on to my little non-clinical explanation, but they're medications that are sustaining life at a point in time when your loved one has not a great quality of life. Okay. All right. Not an easy decision, and certainly one that needs to be partnered with the family, talk to the doctor. If it's a community, it a lot of times might come from us. Okay. That's a tough one. But I remember saying to a family member, what are you keeping them alive for? Okay. Not a question I really want to ask. I don't want to hurt anybody that I'm working with or any families that live in this community. But if your loved one doesn't have a quality of life anymore, that's a question that has to be asked. Okay. All right. And consider what kind of emotional support you may want or need. Okay. Yes, sir.
You used a term that I hadn't really heard before. I think it was injury-induced dementia.
Mm-hmm.
In other words,
Traumatic brain injuries. Mm-hmm.
well, in my mother's case, she had broken leg and had blood loss in the operation, so she lost short-term memory. So basically, you could say, probably had operation-induced dementia. She probably had dementia as a result of the loss. But what she had was short-term memory
Right.
loss, and a few other symptoms that I was one that was an earlier slide.
Mm-hmm.
Suspicion. She was always suspicious that the roommate was stealing from her,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So, and before the operation, she lived alone perfectly
Right.
fine. So it leads me to believe that, and the doctor told us this, that there would be, probably heart didn't work so good, and there'd be loss of blood to the brain, and that's what happened. And so I guess she would have been diagnosed with having dementia after that operation.
I'm not sure how to rephrase that into a question. The basic question, and please, I'm paraphrasing, so yeah, Marley, yeah, I'll take your help, is that if there's a loved one who had surgery, had a lot of blood loss, and when they recovered, they had some short-term memory loss and things. I would say that would be more brain damaged because it was deprived of.
Yeah, the
But I'm not the
oxygen
nurse, yeah.
deprivation.
Yeah.
Or it could, if it was, symptomatic of dementia, then it would be more of a vascular dementia because it was following a cardiac event.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
vascular dementia.
And that fits in with what you said, isn't it? Injury-induced.
Sometimes a traumatic brain injury, because of the injury caused to the brain, they can have dementia-like symptoms. So you treat them very similarly. They wouldn't have a diagnosis of dementia per se. They would have a diagnosis of traumatic brain injury, which results in symptoms that can mirror dementia. Yeah, but still, appropriate for memory care and so forth. Okay, any questions for me? Whoop.
I don't have a question. But
Okay.
I have something to add.
Sure.
I noticed things like today and other days later. When I am with my brother,
Mhm.
all this is beginning to make a lot more sense. All that feeling, emotion stuff, it does make a huge difference how I'm feeling. If I'm
Mhm.
feeling bad, you will feel that. They read that. They don't
Absolutely.
lose that thing.
No, no.
So you must have been having a pretty good day this afternoon. I think I read that. I could feel it. But I
Mhm.
can tell I'm using more eye contact and more calm way of just letting it be. And if I
That's
don't
great.
struggle, I don't think it's not as hard for him. He's still got part of him that wants to help me.
Absolutely.
So it's basic. Yeah.
So
There's
yeah.
20-year difference between Corey.
Right, and his brother, right. So the comment was not so much a question, but a comment that one of the folks here in the audience at Tehali has seen just exactly what we've been talking about, how his brother reads his emotions. And today he was having a really good day, and the calmer you are and the better eye contact and smiling, you have a great smile, and he's going to read that. And I know that people struggle. I mean, the struggle is real, just taking on that level of responsibility. It's tough. I was an only child who had to make some of those tough choices. But now you can see that he's in a place where he's happy, and you have a little bit of him there and smiling, and like you said, he had a really good day today. And you know what? You may get one of those in 2 weeks, but it was all worthwhile. Yeah. Okay, question. Do you know when it's time to bring help into the home? I don't, but you do. And it's when you start getting tired, maybe you start getting a little bit short-tempered, all understandable, I mean, we're human, okay? You're grieving a loss and being a caregiver all at the same time. So it can be very challenging. A lot of times, talk to your doctor or healthcare provider. If you're in a Wesley community, I think most of us have caregiver support groups that you could go to and get some real help through those groups, because sometimes they can see your situation better than you can. I know I'm guilty of trying to do too much. So I wish I had a spot answer for that. I don't. I think it's a gut sense that people tend to push down because they don't want to make that decision for who knows how many reasons. Every situation's different, but certainly a caregiver support group, people that are going through the same things you are, and your doctor could help you make that choice. Any other questions? Okay, well, while we're waiting for that, I want to queue up everyone for next week. So next week, because I like to shake it up, I don't like doing the same thing all the time, keep sending in those questions to me. I got 4 pages of questions this week, and I'm holding them until the end. So next week is our last class for now, and I want to take the topics that you really still are feeling like you're missing information on, and let me bring you the information that you need or want. So don't be shy, no ask is too big, and send in those thoughts, those topics or questions, because I really want it to be about that. So my vision for next week is that the first half would be covering the topics that you are really wanting more information about. And then the last half, any questions, kind of a question and answer thing. Okay, is there more? What are helpful medications for dementia? I know enough to be dangerous about that, but I'm gonna pick on Marley.
So as far as medications for dementia, that's going to be very individualized. You're going to want to talk to your doctor about that. But there are certain medications you probably heard about. Aricept is one. That one they generally prescribe in the earlier stages, and it doesn't stop the progression, but it slows it down. There's been studies on that. Some people will say, no, I didn't notice a difference with my loved one. Other people say, yes, it helped tremendously with hallucinations and delusions. So it's all very individualized, and each person's response is going to be different for that. There are different medications that can be prescribed for behaviors. And again, that's going to come from your doctor and your team. They're going to want to decide what's best, because with all medications, there's going to be side effects too. So you want to make sure you do the most good with the least harm. So.
Okay. Any other questions, Brent? Wow, you may get out early. I feel like Friday afternoon and the best high school teacher ever, because you get out of class 10 minutes early. I do want to thank you all, those of you that are here with me in Tahali. I have the blessing of seeing most of these people every single day, and their support to me is beyond measure. I couldn't thank you enough. And for those of you taking time out, don't hesitate to reach out on the online and send those questions in. This has been so much fun, and just getting to share experiences and maybe touching a note here or there, maybe a little more understanding than you had when we started, is terrific. So don't hesitate to reach out, send in any questions you might have, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.